Good morning. Thank Crunchy, it's Friday. We have reached another end of the week. Start off. Spent a few minutes up here this morning, having a wee look at the waterfall before I get started. Hope you're well. Good morning, Zoe. Hope you're well. Love your videos. Hope you're well. Good morning, Karela. Good morning, Germany. Right, the wee morning waterfall. My wee doggy wanting to walk. He's been stood there looking at me with those little eyes for ages. I got up here about 5 minutes early. Right, waterfall. Here we go. Good morning, Friday morning. Here we are. And we've got to S for shame. Goodness. Massively interesting subject. So for me, and it is only for me, as I said throughout these, sometimes I forget to say it. Morning, Liz. Morning everybody. Shame. So, I would encourage everybody to do their own research. This is just my opinion. I am not sitting in an ivory tower as if I've got the answers. This is my view, my perspective, my lens. And I'm just imparting this on. And if it resonates with anyone and inspires people to Happy Friday. Yeah, it is Happy Friday. It really is. So, shame, for me and my understanding and work, shame, and I was thinking about it as well there, jumping about, trauma tomorrow, shame and trauma, resilience yesterday, resilience, shame and trauma. Now, when I did resilience yesterday, I wasn't 100% sure I was going to do shame, and so resilience, shame and trauma, RS&T, we really are here. For me, shame, this is absolutely the cherry on the cake. This is, for me, shame is what binds us all. For me, shame is what's underneath all of the predeceasing letters of the alphabet we went through. For me, shame is underneath addiction. It's underneath depression. It's underneath lots of personality disorders. Shame is the toxic emotion which seems to bind humanity together. Good morning, Narelle. So, thank you very much for your invitation, Narelle. And look forward to hearing back from you with that. So, here we are on shame. Absolutely phenomenal subject. So interesting. So let us start. Shame and guilt aren't the same thing. Guilt is where our behaviour's wrong, where we've done something wrong, where we've acted not in accordance and we might feel guilty about that. Shame is where we have a deep-rooted feeling that we're not good enough. Now, I'm a child of the 70s, and the mantra of the parents was little children should be seen and not heard. Children should be seen and not heard. You come into a room and you'd say, you should be seen and not heard, stand there, right? So that's a shaming behaviour. But I'm going to repeat this. I'm going to repeat this very early story, the story of creation, right? Now, as I'm banging on about the Bible, I am not banging on about it from a religious perspective. I expect you to turn to Christianity and follow a Pentecostal model of Christianity or anything like that at all. I'm simply saying that I get sparked by this. Good morning, Harvey. We're talking about shame this morning, right? So, in the beginning, God, Adam and Eve, the creation story. And they had what? Where did they live? They lived in this Garden of Eden, a unified field of consciousness, a place of absolute connection, right? So they lived in this place where there was connection, there was love, there was no fear, okay? And they had dominion over everything, and they were asked to not do one thing. which was to eat the fruit from the forbidden tree. Okay? And I've spoke continually about this, because for those of you that's in recovery, for those of you that's on a journey of spirituality or self-discovery, or you're training to be a therapist, or you are a therapist, or whatever it might be, whatever corner of life brings you to be watching this, me babbling from the brooks and the glens of Lanarkshire, right? Whatever it is that brings you to that, this is a key component, an absolute key component in our understanding, from my perspective, right? So, Book of Genesis, you can do whatever you like, but don't eat the fruit from the forbidden tree. They were tempted by the snake. Snake, you want to have a bite of this fruit? No, we can't, we'll die. Or who told you that nonsense? Oh, God told us that. Right, well, that's a load of crap. Right, you'll no die. You will be like God and your eyes will be opened. Right? So they ate the fruit from the forbidden tree. What was the very first thing they felt after doing it? Shame. And shame caused them to cover their nakedness. Right? So that story, in its genius, written 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, or however long ago it was actually then starting to talk about our fall into separation consciousness, into duality. It's called the fall of man in the Bible, right? So psychologically, here we are, thousands and thousands of years on, and I believe that we are now talking today about shame, and in my experience, it's the cherry on the cake. It's the absolute cherry on the cake, and it's the feeling that binds us all together. And I believe it's where we're all stuck, because we believe that we're not good enough, right? We believe that we're not enough. We believe that we're separate. We believe that we're inherently flawed in some ways. And from my opinion, this is the emotion, shame, which underlies all of the preceding letters of the alphabet: addiction, depression, codependency, and guilt. Shame is behind everything that I can think of, right? So when you're working with clients around about shame, and shame, let me just add this wee bit in. Shame, well, in the Bible it says we're born sinners, we're born shame, we're born shamed. Now, whether that's true or not, right, I can't comment, but we don't learn language. Human beings, you and I, we never learn to speak till we were about 18 months, between 18 months and 36 months old, right? Shame could have been installed before you were even born, right? It could have been installed pre-linguistics. So if you were a mother that was a single mother and you did a one-night stand with a chap and you fell pregnant, did you feel shame, right? Did your husband die during childbirth? Were you old? Were you an old mother? In actual fact, that brings a story to mind. I was down visiting my mum and my sisters at the weekend. Now back, goodness, my mother would have been born in 1951. My mum would have been born in probably 1951, and I was sitting at the table, we were having a barbecue, and I was listening to my mum chatting out of just one ear, and she was talking about what age her mum was when she was born, and I think something's telling me that my mum's mum, was like 50 when she had my mum. So my mum had all these older sisters that were, some of them, I think one of them was 26 years her senior, right? Then coming all the way back. And I'm listening to the story. I'm eating my hummus and my dips. And I'm going, why are they talking about that? And what's the feeling that's underneath that? And I started to wonder. I wonder if my gran felt shame or embarrassment about becoming pregnant at that age from a working class family, Gorbals overspill from Glasgow, the Gorbals overspill. working class family, already 6 children before her, or 5 children before her. My mum was one of 6. And I'm listening to the story and I'm thinking about, just curious, wondering if there's any shame in there. So, shame can be set up long before we've got a cognitive understanding of it. So why I'm saying that is, if you're dealing with shame and you're seeing a cognitive behavioural therapist, it's probably best that you change modality, because cognitive behavioural therapy, or any kind of therapy which is having you reframe how you're thinking about that, isn't going to work, and it's going to cause you to run. Okay, so shame, as I said, I repeat myself a lot through these because people just kind of bang in and people kind of see that there's another viewer. So shame, if you were a child of the 70s or earlier, like I am, the mantra that was in my house was, little boys should be seen and not heard, little boys should be seen and not heard, little boys should be seen and not heard. Okay, so then what happens is we install a program of an inner voice. We have this inner voice that's talking all the time. We weren't born with that. We weren't born with that inner voice. We've installed that inner voice, and generally that inner voice comes from our caregivers. It comes from our environment at the time, in the earliest stages of their development, in the first 7 years. And we have a voice inside our head that can be hypercritical, that could say little boys should be seen and not heard. The one that I got was, I'll not mount to very much. I was continually told you'll not mount to very much. And there was this, I'll say it in Scottish and then I'll translate it to English. That useless little shite would strip the threads on a ginger bottle. Right, that useless little shite would strip the threads on a ginger bottle. So translated into English, that small turd over there would strip the threads on a bottle. So, bottle, and at the top there's threads where you screw your lid onto. And if you're engineer or mechanically minded, if you don't get the lid onto the thread correctly to turn it, you would strip the thread. Right, now, new school folk just throw that away, but we used to be able to rethread those, put a different shaped imperial nut on the thread. Going, put you in that home. That's what I heard. Going to put you in that home. Oh God, that was a classic, wasn't it? There's a place for boys like you. There's a place for children like you. You're going to go to the bad boys' home. You're going to go to the home, right? Another one I get told one day. This is hilarious, speaking about this. I was sitting, I don't know what I'd been up to, probably something stupid. And yes, I don't understand you, but that's probably because you're adopted. What? Right? This wee guy, this tiny wee guy, like that. That's why you don't understand me, because I'm probably adopted. No bother. Wow. Right? So, let's just take our parents off the hook right now, because I'm not one. Look how distracted we've become, and I'm supposed to be talking about shame. Stick with the mission, Ross, right? And right, wow, went way off tangent there. So let's just go with the premise that our parents did not do that on purpose. Let's just imagine that they were shamed and that they were shamed and that they were shamed. In fact, let's take the responsibility all the way back to Eve, that went and ate the fruit from the forbidden tree, right? And then we uploaded this program into our brain that we disobeyed a direct order. We then had judgment on ourselves, and we then feel shamed. Okay? So looking at the shame that binds us all. Now, the majority of the work I do is around addiction. I have not met an addict yet that is not riddled with shame. Now, we're going to speak about trauma tomorrow as well, and not everybody that's been traumatised becomes an addict, but 100% of the addicts that I've worked with have been traumatised, right? So shame is a toxic chemical. It's an emulsifying agent when you're baking the cake that seems to bind us all together as humanity. I think that humanity is caught in toxic shame, that we're all caught in shame. Look at what's going on right now in the world. I mean, look at this this horrible, horrible event with this the racial riots, this white supremacist police officer that killed this innocent black guy. Now, then we're going to have to start to talk about race. It's very, very difficult to have a conversation about race without feeling shame. So difficult. Had a conversation with a chap yesterday about, racial equality and inequalities and things like that. And, expand your mind a little for a moment if you're a millennium, if you're, under the age of 40. It wasn't that long ago that white men came along and raped and pillaged indigenous tribes of cultural indifferences, okay, and stole and pillaged and changed. How do you have a conversation about equality without having shame on the table? How do we think this white privileged life that we have? Because generationally, we've inherited these scripts and schemas that have been passed down. And somewhere somebody's got to take responsibility, and it starts with being able to say sorry. We've got to start to be able to say sorry, but to who? To ourselves. Okay, we have to learn to become more compassionate to ourselves when we're dealing with shame. So, compassionate-based therapy, dialectical therapy, therapies which are not cognitive, are very helpful with dealing with shame. And sorry, I'm speeding along here and getting sidetracked. Right, get focused. So shame, that toxic emotion that binds us all together. And it is my experience that we are now starting to deal with what can only be described as the cherry on the cake. I think this is what's keeping humanity on a lower level of vibration. I believe it's what's keeping us from connection. It's keeping us from love. It's keeping us from joined up thinking. It's what's keeping us stuck in a very isolated matrix, which is not effective for our development as a species to evolve. Okay, so shame, we're dealing with the cherry in the cake here. Now, what are useful ways to manage shame? Morning, Hugh Gracie. I notice you're tuning in. I wonder what you're thinking. I haven't seen you for about 30 years. Anyway, shame. Useful ways of dealing with shame. So, yesterday was on resilience. Working with resilience and becoming more resilient then allows us to manage shame more effectively. So, when dealing with a lot of these destructive emotions, we name it to shame it. When we name shame, it can't take hold, right? It's very, very difficult for shame to take hold when we name it, right? So, how can shame be passed down? Maybe that's a question that I never answered. How can shame be passed down? So imagine this, right? Get into a petrol station. Let's just make a story up, right? Guy goes into a petrol station. He's got his 3-year-old son in the car. Runs into the petrol station. He's filled the tank up with petrol and puts his card over, and the card's declined, right? And there's a huge queue of folk behind him. And the guy behind the checkout really shames him, gives him a real hard time about it. You know, all the people in the queue behind him are looking at you. You're starting to feel yourself that hot prickly heat, you know, the shame, that hot prickly heat that kind of, it's so instantaneous, it just fills our bodies up. You ever experienced that? Right, that's a bit of shame in there. That's like the alert, that hot prickly heat that comes through as of, I'm feeling shamed right now. So, right, okay, guy makes you take your whatever, takes your watch off, takes your belt off, takes your shoes off. You'll leave them here. Whatever possessions you've got, you'll leave here until you come back, leaving you with nothing. And you go out into the car. You go into the car and there's your 3-year-old son in the back crying. Right, you're full of shame. Right, what do you do to your 3-year-old kid? you start shouting and screaming at your 3-year-old kid because you can't hold the feelings of shame that you've got. So what you do is you start to explode, right? So how do we start to work with shame? How do we start to deal with it? I think we've all kind of got a handle on it now. I've been talking for about 15 minutes about shame. So how do we start to put effective processes in place to deal with shame? So childhood is, my mantra in my house was, boys should be seen and not heard. Little boys should be seen and not heard. If you do that again, the children's home, you'll be going to children's home. There's an orphanage in Carluke and Curtin Street. You've got a name. There's already a place there. There's a room there. There's a bed made up for you down there. And you'll not see your mummy and daddy. So I think you better behave right then. Right? So shame. If you're interested in this stuff, if you're dealing with addiction, anxiety, depression, codependency, personality disorders that you've been labelled with, right? Shame, in my opinion, and I'm not speaking for an ivory tower, is where you start the journey. Start looking at shame. But if you're going to jump onto a therapeutic relationship, cognitive behavioural therapy is not helpful. I've studied cognitive behavioural therapy. Okay. From my understanding, it's not helpful. Why? Because a lot of the shame that we have experienced is pre-cognitive. It's deeper. It's mammalian. It's somewhere in the deep mammalian brain, in our limbic system. It's not cortical. It's down below there. So in a lot of that shame stored in our body. So you're better process. It would be better perhaps equipped for you to research looking at how you can somatically release that experience. And personally, there are some camps that say you can heal it. I don't believe you can. I don't believe that shame can be healed. I think what we can do is we can become aware of shame, and through that level of awareness and mindfulness and body and somatic experiences that we're having to our environment, when we can become aware of it, that awareness can help release us from the compulsion, the addictions, the pathology, etc., etc. Right? So name it to tame it. If you're feeling shameful, phone your buddy. Right? Phone your friend. So rather than saying, oh, I was really embarrassed at work today, you say, listen, can I get a wee blether with you? I'm like really struggling with shame right now. I feel so ashamed, right? So ashamed of who I am, right? And you start to discuss it. Now, people that are able to flip shame are people that's worked with the R very well, that's worked with resilience, because you know not to get caught in it. So you've become aware in the moment that I'm feeling shame. So the minute that bodily sensation comes through, that somatic response, that hot prickly heat, that it's more than embarrassment, but that feeling of embarrassment comes into our body, we notice it, we go, goodness, I'm feeling shamed right now. So I come back to the 12-step process. Everything starts with acceptance. Step 1 of the 12-step process, shame, right? So we don't mean to shame our children, and our parents probably didn't mean to shame us. But let's just take them off the hook. And it is a program that's been installed in our hard drive, okay, between our amygdala and our hippocampus in our brain. There's a program that's been formulated in there, and we inherently believe that we are not good enough. And what the scripts and schemas and narratives that we create is a sense of disconnection. And we develop personalities and personas as coping mechanisms to cope with the deep wound of separation and loss of connection that's inherent in most of the people that I've met, worked with. Now, we could talk about this forever, and I know I'm missing thousands and thousands of points, but how do you start to deal with it? First step in it all is recognising it. Now, the 12-step process is fantastic, and it's not just a 12-step process that I think should be, that I've been saying this for a long time. The 12-step process is so fantastic that we need to get away from. When you say 12-step process, and that's the alcoholics, guys, that's them that meet down there on a Thursday night, right? Or now Narcotics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, and now you've got all this, and now you've got a war going on within the Anonymous, and it's all just crap, and that shouldn't be that. And it's like, oh, please. The 12-step process is fantastic, because when we start to get up into 4, 5 and 6 and start to move up into the, dare I say, higher regions of acceptance, we start to make amends. We start to apologise to ourselves. We start to see our behaviour. We start to see our part in it. And what is at the crux of pushing and projecting our behaviour out there? It's coming from a place of shame, right? Because we've had the liquid healing, whether that be drugs or alcohol. And these have been a medicine that have been used and abused, which then becomes a compulsion disorder. And a lot of people that struggle with addiction, but when you start to get underneath it and you start peeling back the layers, what we find is what's running underneath is a deep sense of disconnection from self. Well, look back at the creation story of Bible, Genesis. We disconnected from a unified field of consciousness called the Garden of Eden, and we then moved into a separated consciousness where we believe that we are separate, but we also don't just believe that we are separate, we believe that we have got something wrong with us. We believe that we are bad, we're not good enough. And then we come into a world where our parents turn around and tell us that there's a place for us in the children's orphanage, that we were adopted, that we weren't good enough, and that little boys should be seen and not heard, right? And, oh, that's not ladylike. Sorry, I've been talking about boys. Imagine what was said to the ladies. Imagine what was said to girls. And how parents shamed girls. Don't sit with your legs open, right? Sit with your hands in your lap. Sit with your hands in your lap. Little girls get told that. We guys could do what we wanted in that department. We were kind of encouraged to sit with our legs spread open. So then little girls were shamed. Don't sit with your legs open. Keep your legs closed. Sit with your hands in your lap. It's like, goodness, regimented parenting. Now, I really could go on about shame all day, and I'm 100% able to say right now that my brain's already going, you've missed so much, which I have. But for me, therapeutically, and if you're on a journey of recovery, or you're doing a spiritual journey, or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that's brought you to watch this right now, shame, the shame that binds us as a nation, as a society, is what's underneath all negative and destructive patterns of behaviour, in my opinion. Okay, and it's old. It's been going on for a while, and it's pre-cognitive. So I wouldn't suggest that you were to do any cognitive behavioural therapy around that. Shame is pre-cognitive, therefore CBT works cognitively, won't work. Yeah, don't think that's... Hi, Karela. Yeah, in my experience, cognitive behavioural therapy doesn't work. And then we start to look at spiritual aspects of, and I've brought this up as well, if you're part of a fellowship, right, same with CBT. See, when you've got a client that's deeply shamed and in toxic shame, and when you're in toxic shame, look at those people. I'm aware that I'm not doing it right now, but people that are in shame, that's why we're going to go into trauma tomorrow. People that experience shame and trauma find it very difficult to make eye contact. Okay, and if you're working with somebody that's got shame, they'll look down at the ground, they'll look down at the feet, they'll do anything but look at you. Because when you look in the eyes of somebody, there's a connection. Now, the reason that you're traumatised is because you've lost that connection at some level. And when somebody meets your eyes, you're forced. Good morning. How are you? You well?
Hi, good, thanks.
Give him a smash of the note. Look at that. It's crazy. Goodness, have a great walk. Where was I there? Hi, looking in your eyes. So shame and trauma are so connected that people that experience shame and trauma find it very, very difficult to make eye contact. Now, as a therapist, it's not helpful to force a client to make eye contact, because what you're forcing them to do is reconnect to ourselves. And before we can reconnect in any level, before the space, the shuttle can connect to the source, okay, you've got to then relive the pain of the disconnection that caused you to disconnect in the first place. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. Let me try and describe that a little bit better. Okay, so you're going along in your life and a trauma happens to you, right? A trauma which inherently you feel shame around. Okay, so a trauma, so you're going along in your life and then there's a traumatic experience that happened where you're shamed about it. Okay, so if that's sexual abuse or you get beaten or like I remember at school, I get put over the teacher's knee, right? And she smacked my bum. And I always used to pee myself when I get smacked, right? Not bad, but just like a drizzle. And the teacher put me over her knee, spanked my bottom, and I peed a little bit and I had a wee wet stain in the front of my trousers. And then folk in the class kind of pointed at it and laughed. So there was shame there, okay? So that was a shaming experience. So let's just say that experience then caused me to make it fine. I found it difficult to make eye contact because of my shame and my trauma. Now, before I can reconnect, because I disconnected through that, because obviously the class is pointing at me and they're laughing and I'm like, oh, right? Right, that was horrific. So before I can reconnect with that 5-year-old boy, I've got to then feel as an adult the pain, the somatic bodily experience of what it was like working back the way to face the class with a wee drizzle of pee on my trousers, right? Then go back and go over the teacher's knee and then go back into what it felt like to have my bum smacked in front of a class of children, right? And process that as an adult. Then as I process that somatically through my body and experience that, I can then come back to a place of wholeness. Now, do we ever reach wholeness? Because there's so many places where we've disconnected, or oneness. And maybe we can. Maybe it's just one step at a time, one day at a time, and we just keep working through these experiences of shame. And the more that we can hold them, the more that we're able to reconnect with ourselves. And as we reconnect with ourselves, it allows us to reconnect with our external world. And it's not so difficult to make eye contact and look at other people. So, resilience, yesterday. Let's look at ways of building resilience. Then, today we're speaking about shame. And tomorrow we're going to speak about trauma. So R, S and T are so lovely packaged together and very, very helpful if you're wanting to move forward. And imagine what the world would look like if everyone was free of shame. Imagine it. Imagine a world with no shame in it. Because that's what binds us all together. We all feel inherently shameful about something, in my opinion. So have a fantastic Friday. I'm looking forward to talking about trauma tomorrow because I'm really lazy and I don't really need to put much effort into that because it's all sitting up here somewhere cerebrally, cortically, and I'm able to just speak about that stuff because I like it. It floats my boat. So have a fantastic day. Thank you very much for listening, watching, your comments of kindness, and those of you that take the time to give me constructive criticism, because it really allows me to get a sense of where I'm at and how I could do this better. And have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Have a great Friday. Enjoy it. And yeah, no encore. Goodbye.